support it at all. But that policy decision is not really being debated in our county. One reason it's not being debated is we don't have a legislature that vigorously debates issues. If you go to the meetings, and I can't honestly go to very many of them because it's such an exercise of anti-democratic process, it gets me ill. You have a person dominating the meeting. We have some people in the room who were at the tip of his domination recently, not allowed to speak at a public meeting in Montgomery about an issue that is of concern to folks, not only in Montgomery, but countywide, because Medline speaks to a lot of the questions we're speaking about. And when Jess and Sue Cockburn and Debbie were at the meeting to speak at a public meeting, the chair of the meeting, in essence, said, I know what you're going to say, and I don't agree with it, therefore you can't speak. Now, honestly, I don't care if you're a libertarian, a Green Party member, you know, you could be whatever party you are, but if that's your vision of the United States of America, maybe you should leave. Okay? Because that's not what the country's built on. It's not built on you can't speak because we already know what you're going to say and we don't agree with you, or you don't agree with us. And if we get to that point, that's what's, Scott, good to see you guys, and Melissa. If that's what a country is about, we're really nowhere. So we're a microcosm, and we have to understand it that way. Hegel said that what is good here is good everywhere. What he meant is you have to generalize principles. If the principle, the first principle is you can exclude what you don't want to hear, you can't live in a democracy. It's just impossible. It's impossible. So, you know, I am trying to get people from as broad a political context as is possible to sit in rooms like this and talk about where we should be going. I'm too old to run for office, believe me.
No, you're not.
It's not about running for office, I am. It's about trying to get instilled in this county some really rigorous dialogue. I don't think the people are stupid. I don't think the people can't understand. We hear that, and we hear that, and we hear it over and over and over again. But people can't really act if there's no media that covers anything, and we have that problem. We have a media that, you know, gradually has faded away from any investigative or serious reporting. So, Chris Miele has spent an enormous amount of time, I don't want to tell you how much, I don't know if she knows how much, studying the interrelationships of power in the county. That's really what this presentation is about. It's about how decisions are made, why they're made, and how we might be able to influence those decisions with some degree of political acumen and skill and organization. Are you ready, Vincent?
Almost.
Good. Because I'm hoarse. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is please pay attention to her study presentation. Are you in the Republican committee meeting, sir?
No.
No? I'm supposed to announce that the Republican committee meeting is across the way, and the Republican Party did move out of this room to allow us to use it, and they're using a smaller room. Thank you.
Fun fact.
That's one of our county legislators.
That was one of the legislators?
Yeah, we should invite them in here.
Be happy to invite them, but they're having their own meeting at first. Maybe they'll come by. All right, Chris tells me that her power presentation is 1 hour and 4 minutes, which is long. And that's cut down considerably from what it could have and perhaps should be. There's a lot of information. So I'm going to ask her to stick to the point, which she can do and will do. Please listen. Write down if you want your questions. I want people to engage in dialogue after this. We can be here another 45 minutes or so after she finishes. And I hope we have a frank and lively discussion of what you've heard. All right, Vincent? And,
Almost.
all right, almost. There is also going to be a sign-up sheet here. I'll remember most everyone here, but I don't know some of you. So please sign up and just let us know how we can contact you. I'm going to pass that around, starting with Dan Shiivo, and Valerie, and Roger, and on. Okay?
While he's doing that, I'm going to turn my phone off. Ringer, and I don't think I turn your phones off. I'm going to use an old-fashioned pointer. I was at a meeting recently, and all the presenters had these laser pointers, and their hands were all shaking, and it was like really very distracting. So we'll do the old-fashioned way. Okay. Tonight we're going to talk about IDAs and pilots. We're going to start. That's about 30 minutes. And then we're going to get to the fun stuff of cronyism and corruption. Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break, be able to stretch our legs a bit. And if you could hold your questions, write them down and hold your questions, and we'll take your questions at the end. I got thrown a little bit of a curve yesterday when Medline withdrew their pilot application, so I'm going to try to go into that a little bit. I wasn't intending having to go there, but I know that we have a lot of people here from Montgomery, so thank you so much for coming. Thank you all of you for coming. Okay, so 3 years ago, I went to school on Legoland. I had to learn a whole new vocabulary. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. I lived here blissfully in the Hudson Valley, training my dogs, writing some books, and then I met this gentleman here. So since then, I've had to learn a complete new vocabulary, and with the combined power of our awesome attorney and the considerable talent in our organization of concerned citizens for the Hudson Valley, I need to see this. It has been.
It's fine. Go ahead.
We've come to this point. I'm going to start with some basics, and the thing is that knowledge is power, and you have to know what you can do and what you can't do. And when we started with Legoland, okay, these are the types of questions and comments that were written. People said, how do you pay 50% of your wages for rent and still support a family? In 2011, the median rent was $25,500 in this area. The rent, I'm sorry, that was the minimum salary. The rent was over $1,000 a month. So these people did not have the ability, if you have a minimum wage job or a low wage job, you don't have the ability to still work at these types of jobs and support a family. They asked, does the IDA intend to exempt Legoland from state taxes? Nobody knew anything about pilots back then. You know, none of our group, I don't think, knew anything. If labor union is used, the sales tax brings the labor cost more in line for non-union workers. What's the story on this? Does the IDA feel that Orange County residents should take a backseat to Legoland and lose their quality of life? Okay, so this is in one of the very first meetings. Quality of life came up, sitting in traffic came up, carrying the tax burden. The headline said, your taxes will go down. That's one of the big headlines in the newspaper. Your taxes are going down. We're going to explain how that can't possibly happen. Passing additional fuel costs to the very taxpayers who are already benefiting from the pollution and loss of quality of life. How do you determine a payment in lieu of taxes? How do you determine a pilot? Are there guidelines? Is it on a per case basis? How is it justified for a company that makes 34% operating profit? Medline makes $72 million a year net profit. All right, we're not talking paupers here. We're not talking of companies that really need handouts of any kind. When you award a pilot, do you consider the tax base of that town, and when will the pilot become a negative tax? All right, we're going to talk about negative taxes. And do you plan on developing Orange County to win, so that none of us can move, none of us can breathe? And how many of these projects can we support? There are, 32 done and pending in Montgomery right now?
About 32.
Yeah, 32 projects pending in the one town of Montgomery at the moment. That's like, how many? There were probably about 20 or 30 in Goshen as well. We sit there meeting after meeting. Do you see the value of having open space, or do you see open space as only another business opportunity? The definition of a pilot, all right, definition rather of an IDA. Industrial development agencies are public benefit corporations that advance job opportunities, economic welfare, health, and general prosperity of the people of New York State. Okay? This is one place you can fight these people. Have they met those criteria? This is their definition. They do this by providing financial assistance to businesses and by encouraging various types of economic development projects. All right. Now, the Orange County IDA, and we're going to talk a little bit at Orange County IDA, there's the Montgomery IDA, you have counties, towns, villages, anybody can set one up. The Orange County IDA is to promote economic growth through a program of incentive-based allocations that assist in the construction, equipping, and maintenance of specific types of projects and facilities. The IDA works to advance the health, again, here we go, health, prosperity, and economic welfare of the citizens of the county. Not the company, but the citizens of the county, by retaining and creating jobs and attracting new businesses. It shall constitute a body, corporate and politic, and be perpetual in duration. Its members shall be appointed by the governing body of the County of Orange. All right, keep that in mind, please, because that's pretty important. Now, Montgomery has an IDA as well, and they have a much narrower IDA. And what they say is that they will insist in the enhancement and diversity of the economy of the town of Montgomery. Diversity of the town of Montgomery. That's an important point for you guys, right? By acting in support of projects in the town that create and or retain jobs. And to promote private sector investment, utilizing the statutory powers of the agency as set forth under the provisions of the laws of New York State. This is a government, an IDA is a government organization. It's not a private organization. It's not a private corporation. But, so this one says nothing, the Montgomery one says nothing about the quality of life. And to me, the criteria are pretty low. You know, if I'm a company and I want to go looking for where I'm going to put my business and it's marginal, in any way, it's marginal. It's marginal that I'm bringing in 800 trucks. It's marginal that I have only low-income jobs. I'm going to find places like Montgomery. Okay? I'm going to look at these things. These people are not stupid. I have a friend in Colorado who's a major real estate developer. He knows he has somebody in every single place, and they know all the laws. They know where to go. They know who to talk to. Okay? In 2017, there were 109 IDAs. 56 were in the county. 1 was in New York City, all of New York City, and 52 are in city, towns, and villages. So a business can apply to any IDA. They don't have to go to any IDA in their area. So if I can go to the county in Montgomery, or I can go to the town of Montgomery. I can go to Wallkill, or I can go to Orange County. Okay? So IDAs very often compete with each other. Montgomery, by the way, stole Medline from the county. All right, they said, come to us, we have lower fees. We'll give you a better deal. Why is one rating the other? There's a fair amount of pirating that goes around the state. When we were up in Rochester last year, that was one of the ones that had that problem. So there are types of IDA incentives. The way they do this, the IDA gives out money, basically. And the way they give out money is they give out either property tax abatements, mortgage tax abatement, that's 1.05% of the mortgage. Doesn't mean a whole lot if you're talking of a $200,000 house, but it means an awful lot if you're talking of a $500 million project. And some of these projects are up in that vicinity. The recording tax, an IDA may exempt the project from paying the mortgage recording tax, which is 0.3%. Again, the municipality is losing out on this. Not only the county, but the local municipality, your towns and villages are losing out. Sales tax on building supplies. They can exempt them from the 8.125% of building materials. Tax exempt financing. They can issue bonds to help these people purchase machinery, land, new equipment. So the Orange County IDA has an aggressive uniform tax exemption policy that far exceeds the tax benefits of New York State 485B exemption, and we'll get into that in a little bit, thus making Orange County a strong competitor. The IDA takes title of the property, of the project, they take title to it. Because the IDA is a government organization, they don't pay taxes, right? It's government organizations do not pay taxes, they don't pay real estate taxes. They then hand over that real estate abatement to the project, because now they've taken control of it, and then they make a negotiation, a payment in lieu of taxes. So in other words, I'm going to give you this abatement, but you have to pay me something. It's not going to be anywhere near what it's valued at, but you have to pay me something. And in turn, to do that, then the IDA says, okay, we have an agreement here. I'm going to lease this property back to you for a term, 5, 10, 15 years. All right, we're going to go over that one more time. The problem is that we have fire districts, we have school districts, and we have other needs for these organizations. So where is this going to take us? The labor policy, though, does concern construction jobs. We know that they're important. They're very important to our community. It's a major negotiation. The IDA believes that companies benefit from its programs. They should hire local laborers whenever possible. That's the whole point of bringing them here, right? Not to import people from out of town. This way they can say, okay, we're actually giving something back to the community. We're giving employment, we're giving beneficial jobs to the people. So the local labor market is very, very important. There are two things that go on here. First of all, IDA incentives are passed on by the economic development agencies as a must-have. In other words, this company is not going to come here, even though they make 34% profit a year or $72 million a year. They're not going to come here unless you give them something to be here. That really makes not a whole lot of sense to me, but that's how it's presented. I think it's more that the Orange County Partnership would lose the business because they get paid by these businesses, all right? So it's a little bit disingenuous to hear those cries from these people. What you also need to understand is for the purpose of this policy, local labor shall be defined as those individuals living in Orange, Ulster, Sullivan, Dutchess, Putnam, Rockland, and Westchester counties. Okay, they don't have to live locally. In addition, it's the contractor, it's the local union that gets hired, not the individual worker. So when we were picketing at CPV, right, what did we see in the parking lot? Iowa, Idaho, Florida, Ohio, right? They didn't break the contract, they didn't break their pilot by doing that. What they did is they're allowed to do it. The union is a local union. So the union didn't have enough workers here. They were busy doing other projects because there are a lot of projects going on right now. So they bring workers in from wherever. So the contractor is mandated to keep daily log sheets of all field workers commencing on the date of application. A third-party auditing firm will be engaged to monitor construction work commencing on the date benefits are granted by the resolution of the IDA. Has anybody ever seen one of those? Have you ever seen one of those worksheets? I haven't. Okay, new rule. I love these guys. The agency, this is effective January 1, 2020, all right? So there are some lights, and this is kind of a hint on how we can start to work on trying to fix some of these problems that are going to come up here. The agency shall, to the extent practicable, stream all open meetings and public hearings on its website in real time. This agency shall post video recordings of all open meetings and public hearings on its website within 5 business days of the meeting or hearing, and shall maintain such recordings for a period of not less than 5 years. Montgomery did something pretty incredible. They called a meeting of their IDA for 4 o'clock in the afternoon with 12 hours notice. All right. How is that fair to anybody? I mean, it is an open meeting. Anybody can go. You're all welcome to go. You can't talk. You can't say a word. They won't listen to you. But anyway, now that we understand a little bit of what IDAs do, all right, they hand out money in all these different things. We're going to talk about how they do it. So, we've learned IDA grants tax exemptions in several ways to a project, right? To offset the loss of tax revenue to the community, the project operators make payments in lieu of taxes, pilots, to the municipality, all right? The guidelines for setting up those exemptions are actually written out in a UTEP policy. And that policy must be made public. So these are the UTEP guidelines. This is, all of the slides, by the way, everything here is available on the internet. It's just a matter of all putting it together, all right? I didn't create these concepts. These are all legal concepts. These are all legal documents that are out there. So prior to financing, the IDA has to establish this uniform exemption policy. It sounds nice. It sounds, oh great, everybody's going to be treated fairly. Not even close. What they have to consider, all this does is tell them what they have to think about. That the project will create or retain permanent jobs, the estimated value of any tax exemptions, whether the tax jurisdictions will be reimbursed by the project occupant if the project doesn't fulfill the purposes. In other words, is there a clawback that's there? The impact, it doesn't say you have to have one, just wants you to know whether there's going to be one or not. It doesn't say anything about whether you have to have one. The impact of the proposed project on existing and proposed businesses and economic developments in the vicinity. Has that been taken into account in any of these local projects recently? The amount of private sector investment generated or likely to be generated. The public support for the proposed project. This is a UTEP thing. Okay, I was at a town meeting recently. There were 250 people there. They didn't sound really in support. I mean, I could be wrong, but it sounded to me like they were pretty much against that project. The likelihood of accomplishing the project in a timely fashion. The effect of the proposed project on the environment. Here's another thing that's always overlooked. You know, how do you prove this? They don't even believe that there is an environment anymore in half of these places, you know. To the extent which the project will require additional services. In other words, are they going to have kids going to school? Are they going to need bus transportation? What kind of emergency transportation? You put another 800 workers into a location. They're going to need ambulance service. They're going to need additional police. There's going to be all kinds of things that are necessary. Can your town handle that? They have to take that into consideration. The extent to which the project will provide additional sources of revenue for municipalities, schools, and municipalities and schools. So, if you're lost, confused, unsure, unclear, perplexed, disoriented, and bewildered, believe me, you're along with everybody else in all of Orange County. Because pilots become a source of confusion and consternation, especially for the school boards. The property tax cap is a really serious issue in New York. What happens, this is how you get into a negative tax situation. The way the tax cap works, all IDA property is exempt from property tax. As I said, when the business begins, the IDA takes title to that property, making it exempt. They lease it back to the business for a period of time. Local governments, your towns, are not involved in these negotiations. They don't sit down with the IDA. They don't sit at the board. They can go to the meetings, but they're not sitting there. Except they can say, what they usually do is they go to the very, very first meeting where this proposal is still there, and they go, oh, we can't wait to have this company. This is a great company. We want them in our town. Do everything that they want. That's usually what you hear at these IDA meetings. In past years, the audits have found that properties were not always returned to taxable status in a timely manner. So at the end of 10 years, they're still off the tax rolls. And for 12 years, they're still off the tax rolls. Nobody's paying attention to this. Okay? This is the ones that haven't moved. What happens to some of them at the end of 10 years, they go, okay, we're out of here. We don't really want to pay taxes, so they get up and leave. Medline's done it, right? Medline had a 485B. I think in Wallkill, they had a pilot in Waiwayanda, and they keep moving just in time. I don't think that's, truly don't believe that that's why they're moving in this particular instance, by the way. But so the projects don't go back to the tax rolls. There are underpayments and overpayments. There's no oversight. Nobody looks. There are no clawbacks. Can they use the local government has to raise adequate revenue for all these services? Did they really compute all of that correctly? Legoland has, down in Florida, has 40 police officers in that area, in that district. Before Legoland arrived, they had 14. Goshen has 4.
And one, gonna add 3 already.
Oh yes, and they hired 3. That's right. They've hired 3 more. Okay. There's petty theft that's not recorded. There's especially at amusement parks. So school officials, in addition, are not at the table. They do not have the ability to control their own destiny. So it's up to the IDA to say, okay, you have to bring the school in. But they're not necessarily sitting, and those are very often separate negotiations. So the school boards are really up the creek here. The tax cap law doesn't allow for increased revenues. So what happens is, all right, in the case of Legoland, they made $1 million a year payment that they're going to give to the Goshen schools. That doesn't go up, by the way. That stays at $1 million a year. And that $1 million a year comes off of the tax cap. So the cap is then calculated on the remaining revenues. All right? You have 10 of those projects. That's $10 million a year. That makes a dent. You have 5 of those projects. That's $5 million a year. Or whatever it's going to be. So maybe somebody's more generous and they're going to pay $2 million a year to the schools. But what happens then is that money comes off of the cap. The cap is configured on the remaining income because it's not counted in the tax income. Because it's not tax, it's a pilot. It's not considered tax. It's a payment in lieu of taxes. So under the state tax cap formula, these school districts might have to go to a 60% because they're going to, you're going to vote the budget down. You're not going to take a $1,000 increase in your school taxes, right? Sitting down, you're going to vote it down. So now they have to go to 60% to get your vote to try to do something in your schools. So it really puts the schools in a very, very bad situation because they have no power. They've really lost their power. If the company reneges on their IDA agreements, the clawbacks don't go back to the schools. Schools don't have the power. They didn't make the IDA agreement. They're just out of luck. How many members of our school board truly understand how these things work? How many of them understand higher economics? And should they have to? Now, I'm not criticizing them, but should they have to? So what happens is you get into a situation where the people become angry. They protest. They go to the meetings. They scream and yell. It's illegal. This has to be illegal. How can this possibly be legal is what they say, right? It's deceitful. It is very deceitful. They weren't sitting there when the negotiations went on. How is it not deceitful? All right? They're obnoxious. This is a Hempstead town meeting in 2016 that this happened. So the problems, it's my little guy with the problems. Pilot payments distort municipal incentives. They structure the abatements at the expense of counties, school districts, and other taxpayers, and sometimes the fire districts as well. Information concerning the abatement agreements is not published. It's not transparent. It's not in a centralized location. There's no place where I can go and say, show me all the tax abatements currently in existence and where they are and how much money they've paid in. There's no place that I can go to find all that information on one page. All right? I have to go to Montgomery, I have to go to Wallkill, I have to go to Orange County, I have to go everywhere. That's not fair to you because you might be on a border between two towns and need to know what's going on. The criteria used are very, very, very weak. They're supposed to do a cost-benefit analysis before they hand out a pilot. I mean, the one they did for Legoland was a joke. First of all, they used the same accounting firm that Legoland uses. How could that possibly be bad for them? Okay, and the values that they put on things is like, what are they looking at? Where are they getting these values? I would assume that there should be tax tables and information out there, but apparently not. Directly affected stakeholders, like the local town governments, are not involved in the abatement decision-making process. Often, they're not savvy in negotiating these things. A lot of these town boards, God bless them, I don't begrudge people that work on these town boards. Many of them are very hardworking. They try to do the best that they possibly can. But they don't know these things. They're in over their heads in many, many instances. Jimmy O'Donnell told me that right from the get-go with Legoland. He says, these people sitting at this thing, they're in way over their heads. And I think that that's really been proven by all the problems that they've had. Municipal follow-up on abatement terms and benefits is lacking, impeding accountability and impeding the accountability. Redevelopment areas, like Newburgh, where abatements may be granted, are not reviewed periodically to see what do they still need. All right, where should these developments go? Municipalities fail to bring in the types of redevelopment that would address community needs or bring in appropriate improvement. Does it really benefit a community to have 12 giant warehouses in a non-industrial park scattered around throughout the town? Is that a smart thing to do? What happens when the warehouse industry changes radically, which it is? It's a rapidly changing. Same thing, look, all right, you have 4 shopping malls. What happened to these stores? They're all empty, right? They've been over to Crystal Run. What happens in that? They had too much of the same development in the same area. Diversity is what keeps your neighborhoods. Diversity in your neighborhoods is important as well. All right, you don't want the old people all living on this street and, you know, the kids living here. You want the diversity. That's what keeps us healthy. That's what keeps us interested. That's what keeps us alive. It's the same thing applies to business. You want a diversity of business. You don't want the same business over and over and over again. And I know that that's a thing that they do in America, and I don't understand why. But I mean, you have Lowe's here and Home Depot opens across the street. I've never understood that at all, but that's apparently what we do. There's lack of oversight and accountability in employment goals, all right? This Orange County IDA got fined by the authority's budget office for the very first time since their inception, which is 20-some-odd years. They actually did a clawback. I was at that meeting, and they were very proud of themselves, and it had to do with union employment goals. The people said that they promised X number of jobs and they delivered less than half of the number of jobs. So they finally did a clawback. The company had been working under the IDA for 8 years. I mean, they promised me that they're working on this. Returning projects to the tax rolls, or not at all, in some instances. So it's time for reform. IDAs on Long Island in 1 year, or in 6 years rather, or 12 years rather, went from 449 to 812. That's an 81% increase. Okay. The annual cost of the tax breaks went up 23%. I'm sorry, 231% rather. Job growth, however, was half that rate. The cost of each new job was $2,773 in 2016, an increase of 59% in 12 years. They're paying for these jobs. In the last year and a half, people started to wake up because of the proliferation of these types of things. And again, they're being presented to you as we have to have this. After all, New York is not competitive. Well, then why are they coming here? They are competitive. New York is competitive in a lot of ways. They need to start to change their tax laws and think a little bit more. What is this IDA that I didn't elect that's going to have a decisive impact on my community and how much I pay in taxes? Senator Kaminsky, he's actually on Long Island, and he promoted an awful lot of these proposed law changes. So this was in Newsday, Long Island, which was 2018. Newsday actually is an excellent newspaper. They have 8 IDAs, and they compete to hire the same companies. I mean, this is just not only a tremendous waste of resources, but it just is crazy. In the meantime, to add to our problems, this was mentioned the other day in the Times-Herald Record. This is a Pattern for Progress pamphlet. You can download it. It is all the demographics for Orange County, and they're very interesting. So if you see here, Orange County, the median household income went from $69,500 to $75,000, an increase of 8%. However, the buying power actually has gone down $3,000, okay, because of normal inflation. In addition, the poverty rate has gone up. Okay, so where we're getting all these tax incentives, it's not doing what they think it's doing. These numbers throughout this entire page after page of that particular publication shows you that these tax breaks are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not doing what you're thinking. they should do. I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but this is kind of interesting. There's been a race to the bottom. IDAs give away taxpayer dollars to businesses and then have to be raised by local governments from other taxpayers. You'll often hear the Orange County Partnership tell you, this is not real money, we're not taking away your money. Yeah, they are. Absolutely, they're taking away your tax base. All right, there are companies that go in there that are willing to pay taxes, and they're willing to pay even more than the minimum on the pilot. There are companies that exist. Again, Kaminsky had put in a whole bunch of bills. A lot of them did not get through. We have a different situation right now because we have Democrats control the Senate in New York. So Senator Skoufis has proposed these. To ban IDA assistance to projects already in development. In some cases, IDA benefits exist to incentivize projects not to relocate to another area, like Dana Distributors, but to request an additional IDA benefit after their expansion was completed. Okay, the building was done, and they said, oh yeah, we could use some money. Or maybe somebody said, why don't you apply for one, we'll give it to you. I don't know whether it was the chicken or the egg, right? They had no intentions of relocating. They have a big business there on 17. Ban IDA assistance for the project occupant is secret. Blue Water. All right? The project developer that applied for IDA tax relief from Montgomery has not disclosed. They actually refused to disclose to anybody who their tenant is. Actually, they said at the other meeting, right? They said they were going to sell it to someone else, to another developer, and that developer was going to negotiate for a lease. How does the town have any control over what's going on in that? All right? Because they didn't say, I didn't see anywhere, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I haven't read all the documents, I haven't read the 7,000 pages, I read probably about 1,000 of them. Maybe it does say that they're going to take care of that. I don't see it. I would imagine it would be out in the press by then. Close the loop, prohibit elected officials within the jurisdiction of an IDA. We're going to identify who these people are pretty soon. Okay? How many of them? I had a conversation with Orange County IDA the other day. They called me about something. And they're telling me all the wonderful things they're doing. And they are doing good things. They're finally, you know, I've been in, you have to talk to these people too. All right? I've been in conversations with them and I said, look, it's not just about labor. It's not just about jobs. It's about quality of life. It's about sustainability. It's about drawdown. You know, are these people going to stay locally? Are the people who go to Legoland going to eat at Catherine's? No. Are they going to buy a hammer at the hardware store? I don't think so. Okay. So you need to then close this loophole that enables the piracy, luring companies from one part of New York State to another, or from one town to another village even, okay? And require clawbacks. As I said, they had to look at them, but they didn't have to require them. There's a proposed law to require them. These are the laws, the numbers of the laws are listed on the bottom there. In 2017, New York State Controller Tom DiNapoli audited the Orange County IDA and found that multiple projects did not meet the job creation requirements. What a surprise, right? So this is Senator Mayer, and you want to give the school districts a formal seat at the table. They deserve it. They deserve to be there. All right? It's important. Require the boards to include a representative from organized labor. There was a situation with Todd DiOrio, did the negotiations for Medline. Was it Blue Water? Blue Water.
Blue Water.
Yeah, did negotiations for Blue Water. They try to give 85% of their employees should be labor workers, labor union workers, and to support the local union. And they're wonderful kids, I got to tell you. They're great kids who work in that union. He negotiated that 85% down to 60. This is the head of the union. Why? Why did he do that?
Within 3 months. Within 3 months of instituting that local law.
Right. So why did he do that? He's on the board of directors of the Orange County Partnership, is he? I don't know. I have to look. I have it in a further slide. Yeah? Why did he do that? Is there a conflict of interest there? You have to improve Notification requirements. Agendas must be made public at least 3 days before a meeting. There's a concept for you, right? So that you have a chance to decide whether you can go. Don't make these meetings at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The average working person can't possibly go. It's just it's not fair to you, in case you have something to say. But you can always write to them. Require the IDAs to provide a full report on their activities to the local school district. Currently, they just have to report to the municipality. Require detailed agendas to be made available to people. And now we have this, okay? What happened this week, and I wasn't going to put these slides in, and it adds a little bit of time to this, but I think it's important to know. 485B is an alternative to a pilot. It is not a pilot. It's somewhat similar to what a real estate, agricultural exemption is. It's an exemption, okay? It's not a pilot. So what Medline decided to do is, like, they were losing that battle in the press, even though they took out full-page ads at the cost of God only knows what. In the record, every single solitary day, they didn't want to pay that money to the town. They didn't want to pay it in the way of taxes, but they're going to pay it to the newspaper. All right. So what this is, the amount of the exemption. Again, it's not a pilot. It's not a payment in lieu of taxes. It's an exemption. In the first year, is 50% of the assessed value attributable to the construction or improvement. It goes down 5% each year. So the next year, year 2, the deduction is 45%. So let's say your taxes they're going to be way higher. Let's say they're $100,000. Instead of paying $100,000, they're going to pay $50,000. The first year, they're going to pay $55,000. The next year, etc., and so on. This is limited to 10 years rather than the 15-year pilot that they were seeking. So now the problem with this is that the towns, this is an opt-in or opt-out. They're entitled to it. The only thing that the town can negotiate, and this is what was left out of that article, and this was left out of Montgomery, is the town does have the power to negotiate that number, that 50% number. Okay? The town or the school director can reduce that percentage. So when R.J. Smith presented it at the meeting, this was done as a done deal. If you look up this exemption for 485B, go to volume 6, which is the opinions of counsel. There are a ton of lawsuits on this particular procedure, a ton of them. And possibly that's why this is declined. Okay, this is over 10 years. They've gone down 63%. This is no longer a very popular instrument, but I think that R.J. Smith might have single-handedly brought it back to us. As of June 2016, 650 local governments and school districts have either reduced the percentages or disallowed this exemption completely. So that's something we should know. So, what we seem to forget in all of this is that tax abatements should be used carefully and sparingly. They're used as a matter of course. That's where they start. They don't end up there. They start there. The impact and the reality of the exemption from taxation is a departure from the norm. This has now become the norm. All right? This is from the authority's budget office. This is the way they look at this. But yet, we're presented it in a very, very different light. Well, community development is obviously a desirable goal. Public officials should ensure that the proper analyses are done. All of the analysis. Does it fit? Do the people want it? Is it too much of a good thing? Is it too much of the same type of project? What are the impacts going to be? All right. They don't, some projects may not have to go through a secret process. So, but the IDA should be doing that. So, now we have a new rule, which is a fabulous rule. There's, our little guys are there working again. This was September 2019. You can no longer have an anonymous real estate LLC in agreement. Okay, I think this is huge. We actually had problems on one of our lawsuits because they formed a new LLC overnight and they said to us, well, we have to dismiss this lawsuit. You're suing the wrong person. Well, that company didn't exist 2 weeks ago. Okay, so you don't know who owns them. You don't know who the LLC is. Is a launch part of the LLC for Legoland? You know, who actually is party on all these little LLCs out there? So now they have to disclose who that is. I think that that's just a huge, huge burden relieved from us. We're going to take a little bit of break. I want you to stretch your legs, jump up and down, do some things, and then we're going to talk about the fun part of this.
All right, why don't we take about 5 minutes? We're running a little behind, so we'd like to make sure we have time for questions and comments from folks, okay?
Very well.
Thank you.
Hey, Kat, how are you?
Oh, okay. Thank you for coming. Hi. Oh, lucky you.